The startup realized that we're recording. They're not coming to the sessions because I watch it after.
Yeah. Oh, wow. But now we are 5, so that's great.
That's a good start.
That's a good start.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. So welcome to the third How to Speak to Investor sessions. And today we have an honor. It's an honor to have this amazing guest with us here from Helsinki, Fabian.
Thank you.
So we will let you introduce yourself. But this will be for maximum 1 hour. And the way we're going to do it is you're going to give a short introduction and show some of your main points about what you believe in this. And there will be open for questions from if the startups don't have questions, me and David will have questions and Stefan will have questions because we all want to learn from you. That's amazing. So
and I think for your startups out there, Fabian's background, of course, you can introduce yourself, but I think it's so interesting with your crossover experience, everything from entrepreneurship, building ecosystems to startup coach and investment. So it's basically the works for startups. So welcome, Fabian, and we're really looking forward to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Excellent.
So please, we are 6 startups now, but they don't have their camera on, but they are here listening, perhaps having some breakfast or something.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning.
So let's move into it. Give us a little bit about your background and the introduction to.
So first of all, thank you so much for the kind words, you guys, and for having me here. It's an honor, and I'd like to make a positive contribution as much as I can. So thank you, guys. My name is Fabrian Sepulveda. I am an American living in Finland for 16 wonderful years so far and running. Finland is home, and this is where I'll stay for good. As we were saying earlier, I did not move here because of the weather. That's not a reason to move to this country anyway. But well, except in summer. That I have to say, in summer is wonderful, so it makes up for it. But the entire time that I've been here in Finland, I've been working with startups. I did my PhD here at Aalto University. It's a local university around Finnish startups. And while I was doing that, I was very privileged to bring the Stanford Technologies Ventures program, the Stanford University's renowned entrepreneurship program, to Aalto University. So we had a partnership to bring that over. I had 3 wonderful cooperation years with their globally renowned faculty, work with them, got to be at Stanford for some time, got to see some fantastic, world-class startups, of course. And then very shortly after that, I started my own company, failed it beautifully. So then I decided that, with my background from industry, I would probably add more value to startups as a coach, as a mentor, and eventually as an angel investor, and then eventually as a venture capitalist, which is 2 of the things that I currently still do and practice. I am a practicing angel investor and venture capitalist. Raised a fund here with 3 other American colleagues with very strong ties to Finland. One of them used to be the U.S. ambassador to Finland, who even after his term ended as ambassador remained very closely tied to Finland. Our venture capital fund has been running since 2015. We have 11 investments. So far, it's a small fund, but it's quite a focused fund. Primarily, our biggest sector is health. This is how I got to know the team here. But then we've done some investments in education as well as environmental technologies. We are in the process of raising a second fund that's going to focus on digital health only. And this is why we still remain very close to the health tech environment in all of Nordic, just not in Finland, not only in Finland, but obviously in all of Nordic. So this is why I'd love to get to meet all of you and hopefully stay connected with you as we go forward. I want to start sharing slides. My plan and my suggestion is that as we have an hour, we spend about half of it, at most half of it, me showing you some of the greatest and most important points that I think you need to keep in mind when you're pitching to investors for fundraising. And then we'll spend the other half of the time tackling your questions, your concerns, because obviously the fundraising is not a classroom exercise. So we need to get to the nitty-gritty, and maybe we can share some more stories around that.
So just a quick question. Since you're
Please.
raising your fund within digital technology, what's the reason for picking that niche right now? Just quickly give us the reason for focusing on that area.
So what we learned from the first fund, when we were much more broad in our investments in the health sector, we found that as investors, obviously we're biased with that, the ability for startups to scale in the digital world was much faster. And this is not just ourselves, but the startups here probably have experienced this themselves, that most investors prefer digital because of its speed and its scalability. Doesn't mean you're going to win. However, I say that with a pinch of salt, because there are investors who focus on life sciences only, or they have a general practice, general investment preferences in all of health, not just digital. We just choose digital for the coalescing reasons of COVID, of the inefficiencies in the United States. As we're Americans, our hope is to bring a lot of the Nordic innovation towards the US, because I say, as an American, hands down, we have pioneering innovations here in health that could significantly benefit the US. Again, as an American, I tell you that the US healthcare system is broken. And the Nordics have a fantastic healthcare system, and it's in efficiency, and it's in patient care, in proactive rather than reactive. So we have a lot to learn from the Nordics in the US. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to capitalize on. And we feel that we can add most value to those who are in digital health. But in our particular case, the digital health can include a hardware component, as long as the strategy is eventually some sort of digital play. So like if you know the Oura ring, the health Oura ring, that could be in our wheelhouse, because it has a very strong data element to it. But the ring is a means to an end. So that's an illustration there. That's the reason for digital. It's not that, I don't want to discourage other ones who are not in digital. There's still very many investors out there who are looking for companies like that are non-digital. So don't be discouraged just because that's our preference. Does that answer your question, Stefan?
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much.
Right. Let me share where I got to find the share button on this new layout. Here we go. Found it. A window. And this guy. Can you tell me if you see one slide or you see presenter slide?
Oh, we see it perfectly.
One slide.
Just one slide, perfectly. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let me just quickly get into this. So this is a little bit about me. My background from industry, which I did not share, is I used to be an investment banker in London. And if you know the credit crunch crisis, I worked exactly in that. And it was not me. I was only there for a couple of years, and it was way before the financial crisis. But I was working specifically on the financial instruments that unfortunately led to that crisis. And over a beer, if we meet sometime, I can tell you about all of that. As an angel, I have about 18 investments myself, and then I have obviously the 11 investments that I have through the venture capital fund, and through other types of investments like funds and accelerators. I have small bits of ownership in other startups as well. So just to tell you that the insights that I am bringing to you today are from a combined investment experience of about 12 years or so, across as an angel and as an institutional investor. So we're going to talk about pitching to investors. And obviously, the main reason and the principal reason to pitch to investors is to raise money. Now, the first thing that you got to think about is you are telling them a story. Regardless of what you do, what your startup is, what developmental stage it is, and so on and so forth, you are telling your investors a story. If you think of it in those terms, what is the purpose of a story? The purpose of a story could be to inform, to entice, to generate some sort of reaction, right? You want them to do something. If you're pitching to a customer, you want them to buy. If you're pitching to employees, you want them to join. If you're pitching to investors, obviously, you want them to invest in your company. But the first thing that people forget, and you know, this obviously this does not happen with this cohort, but it happens with every other startup in the world, right? That the entrepreneurs are just so overly excited about their product or their offering that they forget to position it as a business, not as a product. And this is the single most challenging point that I struggle with and other investors struggle with startup entrepreneurs. And you know, it's reasonable because most entrepreneurs are very excited about their startup, very close to the product, and so on. And what we're talking about is how do you present your product and offering not as a product or offering, but as a means to an end, meaning as a means to a business, on how do you commercialize an opportunity. That's what investors want to hear a story about. Of course, they want to hear about your product. Of course, they want to hear about how it's going to solve all the problems in the world, right? But most importantly, you want to position it as a business. And so the first task is not to sell your product. It's not to ask for money. It's not even to get them to think about what you are doing, but rather even more basic than that. You need to arouse their interest. So what does that mean? You need to first understand who your audience is. If you're pitching to investors who are in digital gaming, what are you doing there if you're health, right? And I say that because it makes a lot of sense. How you won't believe how many times I get emails asking people, hey, invest in a restaurant reservation app. And I say, well, look, I'm a health investor. Why are you reaching out to me? So I'm exaggerating a little bit and illustrating that point because this also happens when you're pitching to investors live in an audience. You need to understand who's in the audience, what their preferences are, what they're looking for, so you can arouse their interest. You need to align with what they're looking for, and you won't do that unless you arouse their interest. And as you can clearly see here on cell C19, this is not interesting, guys. This is not interesting. You know, I was an engineer. That's my first degree as an engineer. I practiced as an engineer for many years. And we used to do this. We used to put, oh, just throw the Excel up there and we'll talk about it. And when you put the Excel up there, nobody can read it, nobody understands it. And so why are you using such an expensive real estate slide to show nothing and talk about it? Instead, put something up there that arouses interest. What I want to highlight with this, and this happens a lot here in Finland, that people think, well, if I demonstrate the technical capability of what I'm doing, I will be more credible, or I will come out as more, I don't know, efficient, if you will. And there is a time and a place for that. It is not at the beginning of your presentation, and it is not to arouse interest, because that is not interesting. If I tell you all the qualities and the chemical reactions of drugs that are going to cure cancer, it takes away from the statement, I have the cure for cancer. If I start telling you about all the toxins that it removes and all that stuff. So that's what I'm talking about here. It has a time and a place, and it's not at the very beginning. The number one thing you got to do is arouse interest, connect with your audience. So it's not about technical detail. That comes later. It comes with the robustness part, with the credibility part, after you've gotten their interest. Why is this so crucial? Number one, because it happens at 95% of the presentations that I've seen. As soon as the team starts, they present themselves and, hi, we're this, and this is the co-founder, and this is the CEO, and so on and so on. They immediately jump into a technical presentation. And I'm like, okay, that was a big jump. Why are we here? And when the presenters don't connect with me as an audience, I have to process a lot of information that I think is your responsibility to do as the presenter. You're not only being evaluated on what you are presenting, but you're also being evaluated on how you present it. And this is the reason why, because your story is the hook, what captivates interest. I mean, we live in Nordic countries. We're known for being hockey players. We have the best hockey in the world here in Nordic. And as I live in Finland, I've never, ever heard anybody in Finland say, oh, Finland, let's go for number 2. That's not inspiring. That's not motivating, right? So why am I saying that? Because your story, the right side of this slide, is what motivates and inspires people. And that's the first thing you want to do, is be part of our team because we are doing something great. Once you get that part of the story right, then you bring in the credibility, the robustness with the data. And say, first you start, be part of us because we're doing something great. And then move on to say, and this is why and how we're going to do that. Your story, your delivery, is the bridging between those two. Now, I'll tell you a very quick story. When I was doing my startup, was around automotive technology, so car technology, and we had an appointment with the city of Helsinki because we wanted them to open up their cars so we could test our technology and pilot it with them. And I was meeting with 2 representatives of the city of Helsinki Department of Transport, and when we were talking to them about allowing us to use their cars and do our thing, there was the main guy there was not paying attention. He was just on his phone, checking email and kind of listening to me. And I thought that was kind of rude. So I did something that I recommend nobody does, because I realized it's pretty obvious he wasn't listening to me. So I started making up a story. And I said, what if we throw a bunch of drones up into the sky and, we start monitoring the city? And mind you, this is like 15 years ago. So drones was like an exotic concept. And as soon as I said drones and I started, making this fantastical story about drones in the sky of Helsinki, the person put his phone down and then oh, drones. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then I got his attention. And then I started going, I continued for about another 20 seconds. And then I said, oh man, I'm getting myself in really hot water here because this is a made up story. So I decided to come clean. And then I said to him, listen, I'm sorry, I made up the story about drones because I didn't think you were listening to me. And he was not happy. He did not think it was funny. I thought it was hilarious, but he didn't think so. Long story short here, is we agreed that we would talk again in a couple of weeks. So I called him back and I said, hey, Yoni, my name is Fabian. Oh, you're the drone guy, aren't you? So for all the wrong reasons, he remembered me. I was memorable. Yeah. Now, this is an important story. I don't encourage anyone to do it the way I did it, but I was memorable and the guy remembered me. You need to leave the room after you present with ammunition for the investors in the room to talk about you in your absence. How are you going to be remembered? How are you going to be discussed when you're not in the room? So you got to leave them something behind. What is the ammunition that maybe a champion on your behalf in the room will talk to other investors about you? Oh, we should have another meeting with these guys because, and that's what they remember about you. So you got to be memorable. In that process, you have to stand out, because if you're just like everybody else, you're not going to be differentiated. You might be memorable, but you might not be differentiated. I'll give you another story. I had set up early on in our venture capital fund investment period, so during the first year or so, I made an appointment. I blocked the whole morning to meet with 4 startups. I didn't know much about them. I'd gotten their pitch decks, and I knew they were doing something similar. They were all in diabetes management. And the first one comes in and starts talking about how they have a solution, that there's nobody out there, nobody's doing this. And I said, oh, that sounds really interesting. Next presentation comes in and says, we're the only ones in the marketplace doing this. We're a diabetes management company. I said, well, should have been here 30 minutes before. And so on and so forth. And just coincidentally, all 4 claimed the same thing, and they were all in diabetes. Granted, they were not exactly doing what the other ones were doing, but there was significant overlap. And none of them differentiated themselves or stood out. And so we used to have a every Monday meeting, and we would discuss all the startups that we'd met with other members of my team at the fund. And when it was my turn, Fabian, who have you met and who should we take forward? And I said, well, you know what? I had an interesting experience. I met 4 startups that were all in diabetes, and I can't remember a single thing that any one of them did. So we're not going with any of them. And it was like, they were not interesting enough for me to remember, oh, we really need to meet with this company again because X, Y, and Z. And that's your task. You need to give them that X, Y, and Z, because a decision to not even to invest, to give you a second meeting or a third meeting is not going to happen when you're in the room. It's most likely going to happen in your absence. So how are you going to be remembered, and what are you going to do to differentiate from all the other startups that are trying to raise money from them? Now let's get a little bit closer to the pitch itself. Now this is just one example. This is not the only example, but this is one example of what I believe are the most critical points to include in a fundraising presentation. I specify that in a fundraising presentation. Number one, why are we here? Why are we listening to you? What is the purpose of your startup? Is it that we got the greatest and latest app for restaurant reservations? That's not why you are existing. You're existing to make life easier for restaurant goers or something like that. That's the purpose of your startup. Then specifically go to your customer problem or customer need. If you talk about your customer rather than your product or yourselves, you are communicating to the audience that you understand your market, you understand the buyer, you understand the user, and that your product and your offering is a way to get to that customer. So you're already positioning your pitch as a business, not as a product. Then you got to talk about the size of the opportunity. Is this a big market? Because investors, of course, if you're looking for fundraising, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to convince investors to invest in a very small market. So you gotta do the numbers, you gotta do the homework and say, this is a big market and this is why. Then what is your differentiation? So what is your secret sauce? How are you doing something different? Here's a crucial point. You don't have to be the only one in the marketplace, but you have to be different. Now that difference could be big or could be small. It doesn't matter, as long as you're different and you create value in a scalable way. So don't be afraid to have simple solutions to simple problems, as long as you're creating value and it's scalable. And don't be afraid if you see competitors. That's actually validation that your market is attractive and exists. But it doesn't release you from having to differentiate, and that becomes the challenge. Then the investors put a lot of emphasis on understanding how are you going to take this to the marketplace, and that the answer to that is your go-to-market and sales and marketing. That's point number 5 here. Obviously, how are you going to make money? What are the financials? I'm going to show you a couple of examples on that really quick. And don't forget to talk about your team, because investors are most focused on teams. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about that also in a couple of slides. And don't forget to ask what you want. Be very specific. I really, sometimes I've seen really great presentations, and then they fizz out in the end when they say, join us, talk to us after the meeting. It's like, oh God, what are you asking for? You're not raising now. Are you asking for advice? Are you asking for customers? What are you asking for? Be very specific. And or if you say, for example, we're looking to fundraise, but come talk to us about the money that we need. And it's like, why do you do that? Just be very specific. Say, we're raising 5 million, et cetera, et cetera. Be very specific. Now, let me just walk into what we are looking for as investors. So now I'm coming on to my side of the table, and I'm going to tell you what we look for and what we're thinking about when we see startup pitches. But let's start really quick. If I can ask you guys to go to the chat and give me your opinion on a poll. This is the only poll I have, but it's kind of fun to see what people think. So let's say you have 5 stars, and you can choose to give all 5 stars to one or the other, or a combination thereof. And you have to choose between a brilliant startup idea. You know, I've got like the next generation gadget that, you know, solar powered, self-cleaning AI robot that does everything and anything that you ever want, or the ability of the team to take that to market, which is shortcut word for that is execution. If you had to choose 5 stars, what would be the combination that you would choose? Is it A, B, C, D, E, or F? Can you throw it in the chat for me and tell me what you guys think? Let me open up the chat here. Where is the chat? Here, chat. Okay, E. All right, smiley or LOL emoji. E, D, E, T.
We wrote it at the same time. That's why. And
No
he's my
worries.
co-CEO, so we think alike. That's
All
good.
right, so let's see, E. So most people voted for E. So let's see. Execution. All right. So you guys would be absolutely correct. Let me show you at least what some of the commercial research shows. So Derek Sivers is a very well-known super angel in Silicon Valley. Wrote a book on this and on angel investing. And this is his view of a very valuable idea versus extremely good execution. And so in his view, he says, look, good ideas are just a multiplier. Execution is everything. If you have the cure for cancer, that's a brilliant idea. That's a multiplier of 20. But if you have a horrendous team, like weak execution, you're only talking about 20,000. You know, if you have weak execution. So 1,000 for execution, 20 for the brilliant idea. You get that. So this is how valuable a team is. So as an investor, if anybody ever tells me I've got the cure for cancer, then, oh man, I jump out of my seat, of course, right? But if the team is absolutely rubbish, then I'll want to say, look, give me the idea. Let's go find another team. It's extremely important that you not only talk about your team, but what your team can do. And in doing that, communicate the execution capabilities of the team. The hands down best way that you can communicate that is to demonstrate that you know your customer, that you know your market. I'm going to show you 2 slides that as you might have heard of Sequoia. Sequoia is one of the largest venture capital funds in the world and one of the most prominent and renowned venture capital funds in the world. And this is what they say that your business plan should include. Now, I put this here because if you look at the headings, purpose, problem, solution, why now, and so on, they're virtually the same headings that you should include in your presentation. The business plan delves into this in much more detail, but the headings should be the same in your presentation. So you can see that the 9 points that I included earlier mimic a lot of this. This just gets you in the door, or at least it begins to get you in the door. If you want to stand out, Sequoia goes further and suggests, you know, what stands out? What are the teams that we really look for that really arouse our interest, or what they call sizzle? You know, how do we pick out the teams that sizzle? And this is how they describe their presentations and their pitch. Clarity of purpose, big markets. They understand their customers and understand that those customers are willing to pay. So rich customers. The team is very focused. They are not vitamins. They're not nice to haves. They are must haves. So they're painkillers. There is a differentiation, and the team is just amazing, and it's in full DNA. And then there's the last 3, agility, frugality, and inferno. Are you able to manage scarce resources at the beginning? And then once you start hitting product market fit, then scale massively like there's no tomorrow? Or are you not able to do that? Now, I'll show you one study that was done on presentations that we get as investors and the content that we get versus the content we want to see. It's super interesting. On the left of this slide is the content of the presentations that we see. And not surprisingly, about half of the presentation is about the product or the technology. On the right side is more commensurate of what we want to see. Yes, we want to hear about your product and technology, but as a means to an end. We want you to focus and give us your view on whether this is a business or not. And that's why we want to talk about market and competition. That includes your go-to-market, that includes the business, that includes the revenue model. How are you going to take this to market? How is it that you're going to differentiate against substitute alternatives, competitors, and so on? Yes, the product is there, of course, but focus on your presentation as a business, not as a product development organization. At the end of the day, these are the questions that you should be answering when you are presenting, because these are the things that we are looking for. Is this an awesome team, number one? No, but really, is it an awesome team? Do they address a problem that is driven by customers or users, not one that they created themselves? Do they have identifiable customers, and do they have some pilots? Have they started maybe getting some beta customers or beta users? Are they getting traction? It doesn't have to be profitable traction, not even commercial traction, but traction of some kind is the most valuable evidence that you have something of interest, something that could be a business. And then you see that you recognize what we're asking, are you different? Is this a big opportunity? Can they sustain their financial elements of it? And what is my recommendation? This is what I'm thinking of as an investor. Am I going to recommend to my investor team that we take this forward? Do we get a second meeting? Do we invite them to the office for a third meeting? Maybe we want to go through their financials in detail and walk through every line on the Excel. So this is where you have to give me the ammunition and the differentiation to talk about with my team. This is why we should bring them to a second meeting. So these are some recommendations here for you. And by the way, I'm going to share these slides with you. So then one of the most practical things that you can do is, we talked about how you need to know your customer traction, financials, all those things. The earlier you begin collecting that information in an organized fashion, in this case, a data room, the more robust and capable you will come across as an investable team. If you are raising money and you're talking to me or you're talking to an investor and say, hey, here's a link to our data room. And the data room says, financials, establishment documentation, customer traction, and we can browse around that. We can see that you are fantastic at execution, that you're a data-driven company, and data-driven meaning that your strategy is around insights that you gather from the data, that you gather from these pilots, from this customer traction, that you're trying to quantify as much of your development on the market side as possible. So these are some of the most important recommendations. But let me give you a little bit of history and trivia here. We investors are not all knowing. I mean, what we have is the money and to give you an experience, but that doesn't mean we're very smart. We don't like to talk about that. Sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we're smart, sometimes we're smart, sometimes we're both. But I do want to share this with you. Bessemer Ventures actually are one of the oldest venture capital funds in the US. They claim to be the oldest one. I don't think they were the oldest one, but they're one of the biggest. And I'm going to show you the logos of companies for which they took meetings with the founders, but passed on the opportunities because they didn't think that the founders or their idea was good enough. But just have a look at this and cry. These are the logos of all the companies who Bessemer Venture Partners took a meeting with and passed and said, no, thank you. We don't think you are a good investment. Can you imagine? So why am I showing you this? Because not every investor is going to like you. In fact, the vast majority of investors are probably going to say no to you, but don't be discouraged. There will be some, and by the way, all of these companies obviously went on and raised money somewhere else. So don't be discouraged, right? That's all I have for you guys. Any questions, comments? Let's open it up for questions and comments and feedback and discussions.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's so packed with valuable information in this short time.
What you didn't know is that obviously we've been running our own show here, a couple of sessions previously, and we were like, I hope he's not going to contradict what we have said. And fortunately enough, you're reconfirming most of the stuff. So
Yeah,
excellent, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, they heard it from several places.
Yeah.
Very good.
Stupid.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
So don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy. Questions, feedback, comments.
Okay, so please turn off your cameras and I'll ask your questions or yeah, without cameras, it's no worries.
Yeah, I have a question about the story that you mentioned from the beginning. Is this about your as a company, your story, why you start this company, or story about the problem? Because they are two different things in my opinion.
So
and considering that you have only 5 minutes, so you need to use the time very efficiently as well and make an impact for the investors.
You got it. You got it. So good thinking and great question. So let me put it back to you in terms of a question. What would you do with 5 minutes and your entry line? You need to do exactly all the things you say. You need to motivate, you need to amaze, you need to entice. Now, you brought up a good point. There are presentations where you're given 3 minutes, when you're given 5 minutes, when you're given 10, and so on. The shorter the presentation, the stronger the focus on the inspiration bit. You have to leave curiosity behind or enticement behind so they can contact you afterwards, because there is no way that in 3 minutes anyone can understand what you're going to be doing. So the 3 minutes is, all right, do I, as an investor in the audience, do I want to learn more from this company? And so that's the question that you need to answer for them with your entry point, with your very first point. We've got the cure for cancer. Here is why. Oh man, I'm listening. I want another meeting with you. You see what I mean? Or let me tell you about a day in the life of our customer. Our customer is a cancer patient. He or she needs help. And then you start getting into, and you don't talk about everything. It's not an informational presentation when you have 3 or 5 minutes. It's just too short for that. So the purpose of your first meeting, when it's so short, is to get a second meeting. That's the first purpose of the presentation. So I leave it to you to say, how do I capture their motivation and interest to get to a second meeting with my opening header? Does that help?
Yeah, but the other things like market size and the business model is equally important, right? To be able to consider to book a second meeting.
Exactly. And that's what, that's where you get into a dilemma. Do you have enough time in 3 minutes to focus on the market, or do you just focus on telling about the customer? And it depends on your startup. If the market's usually is very big, otherwise you wouldn't be pitching, right? Do I focus more on, look, this is a real big opportunity from the customer's point of view, not just because of there's a big market for it. It depends on what you believe is going to be more attractive to get to a second meeting. So you have to make that kind of call.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And the rest of the startups? Ines, Rimas, Phoenix, Rimas, Daniel?
Thank you, Fabian. Really inspirational. It's like in the past couple of weeks, I've been going from a presentation that I thought was, the shit, and just being able now to see that, I've done so much notes, so I'm looking forward to going back to this one, because we were in the Swedish version of Dragon's Den a couple of years ago, and what I'm really what we had there was actually what you're saying now. We were telling a story because this was actually founded in a personal family tragic situation, and we told the story, and unfortunately our elderly, he died during this process. So,
Oh God, I'm sorry.
so we have a communication service for elderly and disabled people. So so he was not able to talk to us anymore. So it was just physical meetings. So from that we created this service. And now I just realized that we have gone from the telling the story into the product, into the market, and just forgetting the story. So it's yeah, I'm just having a lot of
Very good.
yeah.
But I mean, you're asking the right questions, I think, and you're thinking at least the right points. And you have experience with the Dragon's Den. I mean, that's already really, really good. How did you feel about the way afterwards? Did the exposure on television help out, or
Yeah,
did
it
it have
is.
an impact?
Yeah, but at that point we choose the wrong path. We went to business to consumer. So we thought that as long as we just do big marketing campaigns, we could just hit the buyers, which is the children of the elderly. But they are also not technical. They are also not the ones. So anyway, we figured out that 90% of our customers were in an elderly care home. So
Okay.
so we knew that to be able to give them the opportunity to have the service, we need to get the elderly care homes to benefit from having our product in their home so they can save time and thereby be able to care more for more people. And so we know that we have a market fit now. So everything that we are doing is just sales. We don't have any other focus because we know we have a business model that works.
You got it. No, so you've gotten past the point of product market fit. So now the focus is on scaling. So absolutely great. So awesome to hear. Really good. Very encouraging.
Yeah, and thank you for all the insight, because this just make it more clear for us to be able to present and going back to where we were. So
Daniel, this is super important for you to include in your fundraising presentations. Say you've achieved product market fit, and now you're scaling, and that's why you're raising, because raising money for scaling is drastically more attractive to an investor than for getting to product market fit, because getting to product market fit, has 80, 70, 80, 90% failure rate. But if you've passed product market fit, then the odds get significantly better. You're a much less risky investment.
Yeah. Now that feels more comfortable also for us, because we the management team is sales and marketing team. So we know that we are in the right position also at the team as well. So,
excellent.
So it feels really good. So
very good.
A big thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Fabian, I have a comment as well before I let the startups continue here. I think it was quite interesting, the slide where you actually showed the gap between what the VCs want and what the VCs get. I think that was kind of enlightening. And it was quite obvious that the team information need to come up, and also more information about the market, while the product focus was very strong. That's just to come down. And from this perspective, we're talking about the pitch deck, right? Which you typically send to a VC. Would you say that this also goes for the pitch, where you go in for a 5-minute pitch?
Absolutely. I think that, again, you want to, when you want to talk about the product, you're always talking about your offering in terms of how it's a means to an end. What you are building is a business. The product might change, the product portfolio might change, but the business is one that caters to a specific customer segment for a specific problem or need. And so if you focus too much on your offering, we know that this person's got the wrong priorities. They're focusing on the product rather than on the market, on the customer. And so, okay, we see that a lot, and we work with entrepreneurs to rectify that. But no matter what, even if it's on the elevator pitch, even if you're going down on the elevator with some investor, you don't want to start talking about, look, we've got the greatest API, with I don't know, all kinds of technical KPFs and all kinds of acronym technology stuff. That look, we got a solution that saves lives. We are making senior citizens' lives easier in their own home rather than in nursing homes. You want to hear more? It tells much more than your product, and it entices much more. So every single time that you're pitching, and entrepreneurs are always pitching, talk about your market, talk about your customer from the customer's point of view. You will be much more attractive.
I think that's general advice to everybody, actually. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's move on to more questions from the startups.
Arimas.
Yeah, thanks, Fabian, for sharing all the insights. My question is related to competition and differentiator. So, it's very hard for pre-seed companies to differentiate at the very early stage. So my, philosophical point of view is that, there are probably 150 solar, panel manufacturers, and most likely they are very similar, like slight changes. There are a bunch of e-mobility scooter companies, and they hardly have like a big differentiator. So, we work in a chatbot field to improve employee well-being. So industry itself going to grow from 5 billion to 15 billion within a few years. And they're going to be definitely a bunch of, chatbots as like solar panel manufacturers or e-scooter mobility companies and so on. How would you, answer the differentiator, and how do you differ at the very early stage? Because it's a long process, right?
So fantastic question, and this is a very typical challenge, as you said. It's very common. So there's a solid answer to this. It's not the only one, but in my opinion, it's the best one. Don't try to answer it yourself. Try to go to your customers who are using your competitors' products and services and interview them and talk to them what works, what doesn't work. Interviews, surveys, observation, and then deduce what is missing. What are the unmet needs of your existing customer segment that are possibilities or opportunities for you? Because the answer is not going to come in the four walls in your office. The answer is going to come from, let me understand the value chain and the customer journey when they merge in my customer's eyes. Value chain is what they seek for when they buy. Customer journey is obviously intersecting at the point of transaction. Where does that not align? And that's an opportunity for me. So that's what you're trying to find. And you do that through interviews, surveys, a mix thereof. You got to understand your customer.
Well, we talk with our customers, so nobody uses the chatbots, specifically for engaging employees or, increasing their well-being. But if you look at the, well-being apps, that are in the market, they are still your competitors, and you still like, whether work from preventative side or treatment side.
Yeah.
And you both seek for the same goal, basically, to increase the well-being. But yeah, I get your point, of course.
Yeah.
Customer that.
And look, I would don't look. This is not to disencourage you, but also it's reality. At some point, if you talk to a lot of customers, if you do a lot of surveys, you have a real finger on the pulse of the marketplace, and then you realize that look, there's really no way to differentiate here. Then pivot into maybe not something like, don't start selling couch insurance, but, somewhere else in the wellness industry where you can maybe restructure what you've already been working on, but pivot. That's the difference between an iteration and a pivot, is that you don't just throw everything away and start over. You want to reshuffle the value creating elements that you have towards something else. And in doing those interviews and surveys, you might have found different opportunities. But that's a big ask of an entrepreneur, because very few entrepreneurs, if any, are willing to say, no, I just got to find another customer that likes my idea. And that's a tough choice to make, right? It's tough to say, look, we've been doing this for 9 months or a year and we didn't find the customer, we didn't find the business model. Let's move on. It's very difficult to do that. Usually it's money telling you, I don't have enough money to continue doing this, right? But you can do it proactively and pivot while you still have resources. Again, it's not your case, but don't be afraid that if you ever get to that point, then just pivot while you still can.
Sure, great, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. So do we have any last question from Rimas or Sarp or Enis, perhaps?
Yeah, I do have a question. So great presentation, Fabian.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So regarding the team, you said to mention more about the team. I usually brush that off in a pitch, but what are some of the key points that you should mention when talking about the team? I mean,
So
you got 5 minutes.
Yeah, the number one thing is go way, way, way beyond, oh, this is the CMO, this is the CEO, this is the CTO. What you want to do is how does each member of the founding team contribute to the idea? Here's our CTO, and he or she has X number of years in development. He or she has done a startup and exited before, and this is what, and he or she is building the entire stack of development or something like that. Here's our chief marketing officer who has studied marketing, has done marketing in five years for startups before, and this is why he's well positioned. He comes from the industry, he has a lot of contacts, etc. Show how the team contributes to the development of the idea.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Does it help? Good.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Love ideas.
Great answer.
Thank
Yeah. Sarp or Enis, any last questions on your end?
I don't, but I wanted to thank Fabian for the great presentation.
Thank you.
We've been fundraising for a while now, especially SARP, and most of the things that we talked about amongst ourselves and how we structured it was very similar, but of course there's always something new to learn.
Thank you. Nice call. Thank you for the kind comments.
Thank you, Fabian. It was great.
All right.
Great.
All right, should we wrap it up then?
Yeah, let's do that. I think this has been an amazing session. Very good, very packed information, and also questions and answers. Really good. So you have any last thoughts?
No, I just want to thank Fabian for backing up what we said previously as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Good that we align. Excellent. Good luck to you guys. Feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. And as I offered last time, Stefan, and guys, I want to offer to all the startups here, if you guys want to have just a separate session online, you want to bounce off ideas, you want some coaching, I'm happy to do that in short bursts. Just reach out to me over LinkedIn and we can go from there.
Actually, Stefan and I have a startup that we want to discuss with you. Can we do that?
Of course, you guys know that. Just
you want to know what it's called? It's called Digital Well Venture One.
Yeah.
And it's a fund that's going to invest in the cohorts.
Yeah.
So we're just setting it up actually. So that we would like to discuss with you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Would love to hear that. Don't forget. Don't forget. That sounds super interesting. You got my attention.
Yeah.
You got I want in. I want to have a second meeting.
No drones.
No drones even. All right, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the
Thank
session.
you.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.